Hey, morning everyone. Thanks for all being here to listen, and thanks for a nice introduction to talks that give a good lead on to what I'm going to talk about. Just like Lisa added, I also need to add a little towards developing simple metrics to measure ecosystem change. This is again a collaborative project, actually predominantly led by my colleague Zoe and then Michael Brock from the Department of Environmental Affairs. Zoe just makes me always stand up and talk whenever we go. Okay. So I'm trying to start with a little background. South Africa, like many, or most countries in the world, are signatory to lots of international conventions around environmental change, biodiversity. I mean, these are just some of the numerous protocols. And these all require a whole lot of reporting and monitoring stuff done. And supposedly, I haven't seen any of these reports, but I gather South Africa does send the reports that are needed for these different conventions. And where the information comes from, we're not sure. There are studies, there is ad hoc state of the environment reports. There's a lot of things around some ad hoc studies in certain areas around degradation. But there's not a systematic process of monitoring environmental change. And in addition, part of this, South Africa is also, we have one of the largest, if not maybe one of the largest government-supported restoration programs. We're a massive working for water programs involved into the natural resource management programs that are phenomenally huge projects. And they've been operating for over 20 years. This just the Working for Water program has spent 10 billion rand, 3 million hectares have been cleared of alien plants, 200,000 job opportunities. This is figures for Working for Water, which was started around clearing alien plants to get water resources. But it's now got this huge long list. I wasn't going to bore you with a long list of supposed objectives of these programs. These programs obviously come into get criticism all the time from a lot of different aspects but any large-scale government program is going to be criticized. But they also do phenomenally great work, and they are having a huge impact on restoring a lot of our environments. But we don't really know what they are, because we don't really monitor very much. So with all the objectives that the NRM programs have, we really only know how many hectares of alien plants have been cleared, and how many person days, how many jobs have been created, and how much money has been spent. So we do actually have a lot of good information on how many liters of herbicide have been used. But we don't actually know what has it done. And this applies to, and again goes back to my first slide, around all the different protocols. We report on our levels of degradation, but we don't know, are we getting better, are we getting worse? There's a lot of studies, there's been a lot of research on the Working for Water programs. There's a lot of evidence of the impact of alien plants on water, and trials that you can then extrapolate over the rest of the country to show what is the change and what is happening. But the problem is, as it's clear in the last two presentations as well, when you want to look at environmental change, there's this huge complex list of things that you need to look at. Biodiversity, what are the different species there, what are the different grasses that are in there, and it all requires specialist work, and it's very expensive, so it just doesn't get done. So what we're trying to look at is how do we do this on a systematic scale, systematically, just irregular monthly data coming in and across the whole country. So the NRM programs, again, as I said, they're huge, and they also cover a large portion of the country, except the middle of the country. Seems to be very little happening there. But this is the project locations. It's a pretty good coverage of the country. There's about 80,000 people working. If you break it down into the teams that are working, they work on contractors, probably about 20 teams. There are thousands of teams working every month across the country. They're relatively unskilled people, but they are doing restoration work. We just don't know what impact they're really having. So what we want to look at is how do we develop a way of getting a standard set of very simple tools out there that we can measure. And the first step would be to get all of these teams working Just like they have to put in a timesheet of how many people worked that month, how many litres of herbicide did they use, how many hectares of alien plants did they clear. Just a little snapshot where they spend a day or so at the beginning of their contract measuring something on the ground and a snapshot at the end. And we pull that together. And yeah, it's open to a lot of criticism, and that's why we present this. We want buy-in in terms of what are these metrics and what should we be doing. So, so as I say, this is our goal, is to try and come up with some things that require basic equipment. We can't be sending samples to labs to be identified. We can't be identifying a myriad of different invertebrates that people need specialist training in. We also want to be able to show change in a short period of time. So we're not saying whether things are, we're not benchmarking either. We want to be able to show that things are getting better or worse. We can take the information and use it more specialist and do proper benchmarks against what a benchmark ecosystem should be. But we need to be able to say, are things staying the same, getting better, getting worse? Very similar to what Pete was saying around the biodiversity. Yeah, we measure default condition, but what does it mean? And that's what can we do? And then using this large unskilled workforce. Pictures I've got there on the side are just what is a small project being done, headed up by Rhodes University in Tabalenga catchments in the Eastern Cape, where there's a big project around trying to restore the grasslands so that the new Tabalenga dam they're going to build doesn't fill up with soil like Mount Fletcher Dam did. So we're trying to improve the grazing management, etc. But you need the baseline. We need to measure the sediment yields and the sediment levels in the river. And so local people, very basic tools, getting a network of people out there measuring sediment. And it's working. We're getting good information. So the question is, what should we monitor? And this is a very broad question where we've asked this question to little groups of ecologists, and it's a very long discussion. But we have come down to actually it's not very many things that can be used. It's these getting some proxies to what can we measure that will show some sort of change. At a top level, we've just looked at the UNCCD program around land degradation neutrality that requires reporting on land cover, carbon stocks, and productivity of landscapes. It's a bit broad. These are done at national scale, but they're saying there has to be data, ground truth data on the ground. And then, so Zoe, myself, and Michael ran a workshop at an international restoration conference recently to talk to generally, broadly, outside of South Africa, what do people think? And we really came down to, well, the important things to measure around restoration, showing that there is a progress that towards restoring a landscape. Comes down to basal cover, regeneration in terms of are there new plants coming into the system, and then some sort of measure of productivity. And then there's a list and we've done basically a small email survey between Zoe and I, sort of out of a network of people that we know, and that's what we would like to expand on after this. And there's a bunch of things that came out as being that's important things that we need to look at. But with our discussions around the conference that we were in Brazil, we're discussing the team there that are dealing with the Atlantic rainforest. They've got this huge monitoring program, and they had these 19 indicators, and it's very, very detailed report and manual and stuff around how to measure these things. And that's what they started in 2013. In 2017, they've now reported back just to 3 things, because if you're going out there and getting people to measure 19 indicators, you just don't get any information because nobody gives you that. So they've decided that figuring out this obviously is for very specific rainforest, but what is the ground coverage of native vegetation? What is the density of native vegetation that's regenerating? And the number of regenerating native plant species. Again, this has been focused around restoration because that is the work that we predominantly do, and forest restoration, but we're trying to broaden it to say, can we find a way of systematically gathering information that just gives us a picture of this landscape in South Africa? And so what we have, I don't have any answers yet, but what I do know is that the tools are there. We do know they are very simple things. And just we want people to apply their mind to figuring out what those proxies are. So, for example, just measuring the soil cover gives us a lot of information. How much of bare soil there is it actually can be extrapolated to a lot of things. A big thing that we need, we're a water stressed country. We need to know that we're getting more water. What is water quantity? Are we improving the water quantity by doing restoration work? We can't measure it. Stream flow is such a difficult thing to measure and interpret. You've got to have long-term studies in place. But maybe just measuring infiltration rate at a site can be inferred to do that. So this is an approach we're doing, and there is an opportunity. There's support from Environmental Affairs' Natural Resource Management Program for us to roll this out. And we're going to be holding a few workshops, but as of early next year, the teams that Wildlands directly manage that do restoration work, we are going to be sending them out there with a few little basic tools based on work that's been done in East Africa to go and start measuring things. So we can start costing out what does it take, what is the logistics of it, and what is the data we're getting in. For now, I've got a short little questionnaire we're going to hand out just for you guys just to tick some things. But more importantly, we'd like people's contact details that we can get back and start this conversation, because I think there is an opportunity here to gather a lot of meaningful data. But it's only meaningful if all the scientists and ecologists out there actually think that it is something worthwhile, that we're gathering stuff, that we can pull all the data together and analyze and look at it. So that's me for now. Thank you. But